What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of More News. This is going to be our third rendition of this podcast spin-off episode of the More Important Issues podcast network. Once again, I am Trey. If you could see here, I brought in one of my good friends from back home from the Midwest, Mr. Luke Collings. Luke is a diehard college basketball fan, and as you guys know, the clock has turned to March. It is March 16th as we record this, and we got brackets. From sitting here today, we have, I believe, the first 4 games start tomorrow. Am I right, Luke?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so Luke is going to help me get in the mud and point out to you guys the most important things you need to know when you're filling out your brackets. You know, everyone's got their bracket challenges. At work, you got, what do I need to know to win that money at the big potluck for, the bracket challenges. So we just thought we'd jump on here and give you guys some pointers, kind of what we thought about looking at the bracket and things you need to know going into this tournament this March. So, Luke, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and as they can see your sweatshirt there, they can probably take a little guess of, what you affiliate with and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. As Trey mentioned, we're both from the same hometown. Grew up an Illinois fan. That's where I graduated from in 2020. Like you mentioned, love college basketball. It's a great way to spend the weekends and weeknights. Looking forward to what's going to be a great tournament on the surface. Lots of incredibly interesting matchups, a lot of potential upsets that I see on the board. But honestly, Trey, and I know we're probably going to get into it, a lot of it seems pretty chalk on the surface of it.
It does. And it's funny because the first rendition of this that I did, I kind of talked about how I thought there was probably closer to 10 teams that could win the tournament. I'm not saying that now on March 16th, that's not the number. If you could name me off 10, I probably could get to 10 still. But, I think the biggest thing, as I talked about, history tells us those 1 through 4 seeds, that's where your national champions are going to be. So technically there's a shot for at least 10. But, yeah, definitely the chalkier. And I guess let's start there. I think the chalk discussion is something we can talk about. So if, I talked to my mom or I talked to my wife, she said, I'm just going to flip a coin and that's how I'll do a bracket. And I caution them because, I haven't made the perfect bracket as far as I know. No one has yet. But, there was Jay Kuda put out a graphic this week with some information that the 1 through 6 seeds, he made the most difficult path to make it to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, assuming no upsets. And the top 4 teams who have the best odds with the easiest path to the Final Four are respectively Florida, Arizona, Duke, Michigan. So, I mean, it's, Florida has an 84.8%, Arizona was 68, Duke was 62, and Michigan was 60. So I think the chalk is probably right, So maybe if you're flipping coins, maybe do it a few different times and you're doing those top seeds.
Yeah, I'd say for this year especially, don't feel like you have to find an underdog right away. Especially just you take some time to mull it over. Don't feel bad if you go down your bracket and you don't see a ton of upsets, because I think this year is pretty top heavy in terms of which teams are going to be able to cut down the nets. But like I said, don't feel too bad if you go down. You're like, I really feel like I need to pick some more upsets. I think you're erring on the side of caution here with a lot of these teams, because we do have some pretty strong high seeds this year. So
yeah, and I think the committee, in my opinion, I think they did a pretty good job of giving us a good field. I know there was a lot of discussion initially about Miami of Ohio's and the Auburn. And I know in the More Important Issues episode, at least last night, we did our little dance on Auburn's grave, with them and their social media team this past week. But I think the committee did a really good job. And I really, besides 2 or 3, I don't necessarily agree that where St. John's was seated versus an Arkansas, maybe at a 4, or the biggest one, I think Vanderbilt as well. What seed line did they fall at? They fall into a 5. because they did, I think it was really interesting last year. Michigan goes through that run through the Big Ten tournament, and they're not really propped up very well when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Fast forward a year later this year, Purdue does a very similar thing. You're a 7 seed in the Big Ten. The committee looks at your work through the tournament, which I think is important, the conference tournament, and they give them a 2. And then you turn around in Vanderbilt and you're a 5. So besides those seedings, I mean, tell me what you think on that, though.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point with Purdue in particular, because I don't think it's a secret they had a lot of missteps throughout the regular season, especially being the preseason #1 overall.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Keaton Wagler's 46-point performance at Mackey Arena. They surprisingly struggled at times at Mackey. It felt like this year. It felt like Mackey getting a win this year.
5, I think, home losses this year, including one of those 5 being a senior night game with a senior heavy roster to Wisconsin, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, Mackey is notoriously, like, I think it's got to be one of, if not the hardest place to play in the country when it's at full capacity and it's rocking like that. So I don't know what their deal was this year, especially has such a senior heavy team like you mentioned. I think I saw that Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR, they won it their freshman year, the Big Ten tournament, and then they come back and win it again their senior year. So you would think that would lead to not a lot of missteps throughout the year, but for whatever reason, it just felt like at times they struggled. But all that to say, they've been rolling as of late. They played really well, which I mean, credit to them for being able to figure it out as they've gone along, and that's what makes them such a dangerous team going into this tournament.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go ahead and dive into this bracket. I think one of the things I kind of talked about with Luke was you obviously got the 4 regions. And looking at it, Duke comes out as your #1 overall seed. A very impressive season, only with 2 losses on the season, steamrolls through an ACC conference. And what's your reward? This. I mean, just an awful draw. I think the number I saw was 7 combined national championships between active coaches in this region. I mean, you got brands on brands on brands, and the blue bloods that we talk about. And I think sitting at the 4 regions, this one has to be the most difficult. I mean, you tell me what you think, Luke. I mean, this has to be the most difficult.
I really don't even think it's close, because obviously, assuming Duke beats the 16 seed Siena, the reward is potentially a Ohio State team that's been playing really well, that took Michigan to the wire a few times this year, with a lot of strong guard play, and they rebound well, and they're not a pushover. So it's going to be a fight for them to get to the national championship. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, you look at St. John's, who, yes, you can have your own opinions of what you think the Big East is currently compared to what it was, but a team that was very competitive in their own conference, as back-to-back conference champions, and you're plugged into a 5 seed. I mean, it's nuts. And you get matched up with a potential #1 overall in the second round, potential, if he plays, #1 draft pick, and Darren Peterson. I mean, it's an incredible region here in the East. I mean, and then you also get the UCLA UCF. I think it's going to be good games here.
Yeah, definitely. UCLA, I think, has become kind of a darling in the brackets lately, just because if they're fully healthy, they are very dangerous. Donovan Dent, who kind of started off the year pretty slow, especially compared to what he was expected to be as a transfer, he's been lighting it up, and he's not been making many mistakes. Takes care of the ball, distributes it very well. So if they're healthy, him and Tyler Bilodeau, if they're healthy, UCLA is a team to watch out for in the East for sure.
Mm-hmm. Quickly looking at the East here, what are some first-round matchups that really pop off to you, that really catches your eye?
Yeah. The first one being UCLA, UCF, like we mentioned. The other one that I think a lot of people are looking at is that Louisville, South Florida matchup. South Florida has a lot of get up and go. They're very strong offensively. They've got the player of the year on that team in their conference, and Louisville has struggled at times this year. Michael Brown is going to be reinserted into that lineup, so it's going to be a matter of can they readjust to having him back and play to their potential, because Michael Brown's another guy you're looking at a top 10 pick right there. So it's going to be tough. So that's one of the games I have circled on for sure. Another one would be St. John's, Northern Iowa. St. John's, you've kind of mentioned a little bit. I think maybe with looking at that 5 seed, maybe they were punished a little bit, fairly or unfairly, for the Big East being a bit down this year. But in their biggest opportunities, I think they've really shown. So I'm hoping we get that Sweet 16 matchup of Duke and St. John's, because I think that'll be a really, really interesting matchup.
Yeah, Duke and St. John's, and that would take place out in Washington as well, or DC, I should say, not the state of. But yeah, and I find it so fascinating. I love that you bring up Northern Iowa. It's very funny how we as college basketball fans, we can see Northern Iowa and be like, oh my God, remember when they went on that big run, or UMBC, I saw they're back in the tournament or something like that. It's like, okay, but that was 10 years ago, like it's
right.
Yes, it's cool to see them, but I think we attach so hard. So, but yeah, the East region, it's going to be incredible basketball. So
yeah,
whoever comes out of that, I think is a very, very battle tested and has a real good shot to be like, this is an elite basketball team and can make a big push for a national championship.
Yeah, not a single doubt there. I think you're going to hear that a lot as if you read social media and you listen to coverage and read articles and everything. It's going to be something you see over and over again, that whoever comes out of that region is going to be a heavy favorite to go and win it all.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you kind of lead this, Luke. Obviously we say the East is probably our hardest. We both agree with that. Where do you think is the more, I don't want to say easiest, but for those 1 seeds, which one do you think is a more favorable matchup?
I think it's hard to say that the Midwest wouldn't be the easiest out of those. The more I keep going through it, it's just like, how does Michigan not just walk to a Final Four here? Because Michigan is obviously, it pains me to say, with my bias and everything, but they're incredible. They're going to make it very hard on everybody else in that region. Iowa State, I think, obviously being their biggest challenge. Not that that's a shocker to anybody. Iowa State's incredible in their own right. So if we get that as an Elite Eight matchup, I think that'll be a very, very high level basketball game. But there's also a few spoilers that you could see in here, especially one matchup I look at being Alabama and Hofstra. I know everyone's probably saw the news that came out today that one of their best players was arrested, and it doesn't look like he's going to be with the team for the foreseeable future based on the latest information that's come out with that. And Hofstra has a really strong pair of guards, one averaging about 20 points a game, and they can really light it up. So if Alabama, with their defensive weaknesses at times, if they aren't on their A game, that's absolutely an upset that I'm looking at right there.
A big thing that stands out to me with Michigan, I think if I didn't watch the Big Ten championship game, and I just filled out my bracket after that, let's say I heard Michigan lost, I didn't watch the game, but I did watch it. I saw it with my 2 eyes. That was a different Michigan team than we saw all year. And Luke, remind me of the guard that is hurt for them. Their backup, ball handler.
His name is escaping me at the moment. Maybe because we're on the spot here. But he did tear his ACL during that Illinois game, which was a big blow to them, because he's obviously one of their better players and one of their better scorers. So that's a tough loss for them for sure.
And I think a loss to a player like that, obviously Cadeau is your main ball handler. He's been the one all season long, and he's been great. I'm not taking anything away with him. But with a team like them that was so dominant all year, when you get something like that late in the season and it kind of sets you back, I think that is hard to come back from. And now I'm not someone to say that Michigan's going to get upset by the UMBCs, the Howards, or anything like that. But I look at that next matchup, and I know we talked about in the last one, what are some games that stand out to you? Georgia St. Louis, I mean, that are some tough teams. I think it's, bring your lunch pail. Georgia's going to beat the snot out of you. They got some big athletic guards. And St. Louis coached very well as they're kind of falling off here at the back end of the season. But when you get a big physical team, I think Georgia does make it out of that. And you come up against Michigan that I don't want to say is limping in because they made it to the Big Ten championship after a historic season. No one limps in at 31-3, but I think it's going to be very, very interesting, that second round matchup.
Yeah, assuming Georgia does make it past St. Louis, which is not a given by any means, because St. Louis, like you said, very well coached. Georgia has a lot of big athletic dudes. One person coming to mind being Cannon Catchings, stud BYU transfer. He's got pro lineage. He's got everything that you would need. And Georgia's been playing really well down the stretch as well. They've been shooting up in the metrics and the different rankings and that sort of thing. So that would definitely be one to look out for. And Michigan, I know I made it kind of sound like it would be a cakewalk, but they will be tested. They've been tested down the stretch. No game is an easy game in this tournament. So yeah, lots to look forward to. And we'll see if they can pull it out, see if they can make it back to the Final Four and maybe even national championship.
Yeah. And when you say, no game is easy in this tournament, I think that can't be so right about that Friday game in St. Louis with Kentucky Santa Clara. I think that's going to be an incredible basketball game. Santa Clara, a team that is very competitive in that West Coast Conference. Obviously, Gonzaga is not the Gonzaga that we know in years past, and St. Mary's is there still, but it's a 3-bid league, and Santa Clara held their own, and they got in, not from winning their conference tournament, but by their work of art. They're a good team. But I think the thing that stands out to me when I fill out my bracket on this side, it's Iowa State. I am very, very, very bullish on Big 12 teams this year. I think that conference was a gauntlet, and I think when you can come out of there at 27-7, they're one shot away in their own conference tournament from beating Arizona. It's
right
there. You got a great coach in TJ Otzenberger. Yeah. I'm probably saying it wrong, but that they're a really good team. And we talked about at the start of this show that, chalk is the name possibly. I'd be okay with chalk here. I'd love to see a Michigan, Iowa State to go to the Final Four. I think those are two great teams right there.
Yeah, and you have a lot of guys on that Iowa State roster that are battle tested, as we like to say. Tamin Lipsey is a stud, 3-time All Big 12 defensive team, and they just have dudes, man. And like what the other popular saying, Jimmys and Joes, X's and O's. I think they kind of have a really good mix of both. Otzelberger he's a great coach, and they've been through a lot in the past years as well. They've taken some tough losses in the tournament, so you would have to imagine that all that experience is gonna accumulate into this year, and we'll see if they can make it to the Final Four. Because I agree with you. I would be very bullish on them as well. That would be a heck of a game. There's so many potential Elite Eight matchups that we can get in this year's tournament that would make for some incredible television.
Yeah. Before we jump off the Midwest here, I wanted to ask you one thing on here. Virginia. What's your thoughts on them? I know Wright State's a good team that they're going to have a matchup with, but are you buying? It seems like of all the 3 seeds, and let me pull up that tweet again that had the percent odds to make it to the Final Four. Out of the 3 seeds, Virginia has the second lowest possibility to make it to the Final Four about the 3 seeds. You got Gonzaga, Illinois, Michigan State, and Virginia. So they're a weird team to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes maybe their offense can struggle at times, but they have a heck of a center there that really anchors their defense. And we saw this past weekend they took Duke to the brink in the ACC title game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say they're like a boom or bust kind of team, but they can definitely get they could definitely get upset along the way, especially if they come across a Tennessee. Tennessee's such a strong defensive team that could be a real case for the under in that game, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they can be an odd team, like you mentioned, but I don't think anyone should overlook them either.
Yeah.
I think they could make a run as well.
In years past, I think you see a 3 seed and ACC team and it being Virginia, and you're like, okay, let's get you to the Sweet 16. But it's harder to do this year. It really is. So
yeah,
jumping from the Midwest to the West over here, talking about me being bullish on Big 12 teams. This is a region that gets me interested. Me and Luke, a little bit before we press play, we were talking about that bottom half, and that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. Little spoiler, we'll talk about our picks here at the end, but I told Luke I can't stop picking Purdue to go deep in this tournament, and it's frustrating to myself because I've seen them. We talked about the 5 losses at home in Mackey, and we've seen them in this same core of team in past NCAA tournaments, blow it in games in this tournament, in this NCAA tournament. But that bottom half of that bracket is the biggest thing that stands out to me when I look at the West region. Gonzaga is not the team they used to be. The Miami-Missouri game is so odd. I know a lot of Missouri fans they acted like they were the 1 seed. They're getting to play in St. Louis. It's just a short car ride away from them to go there. And I don't know. It's just a fascinating bracket. And then you got another, like I said, potential first round overall pick, AJ Dybonza, or Dybonza, however you want to pronounce it, that he's a guy, we've seen it in years past, that one guy can carry you in a tournament like this setting. And maybe he is that guy as well. So what do you see on this bottom half here, Luke? Or even the West as a whole?
The first thing I want to point out to any of you that like to dip your toe in the gambling world, tomorrow I would say for that Texas NC State game, maybe look at the over, because both of those teams can play really good offense and they are both terrible on defense. They did actually play once this year, earlier in the year, where Texas did beat NC State. So I think you're going to get a high offensive powered game there. So that's one of the first things I think of. I have a hard time disagreeing with you on Purdue. I personally have them playing Arizona in the Elite Eight, just because they've come on so strong down the stretch, and they really got the benefit of winning the Big Ten tournament, getting up to that 2 seed. Things have really sort of fallen their way, I would say. Another game that's interesting, all the 8-9 games this year, the Villanova and Utah State in particular, I think pretty much everybody that I've seen is picking Utah State. And that's just because Villanova, I think of them, they're almost like vanilla, because they're not really like good, like amazing at anything, but they're a really high floor team. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did beat Utah State. And I think technically speaking, from an odds perspective, Utah State is the favorite. So Villanova is another interesting one to me. As I keep looking up and down this, each game seems more intriguing than the next. Wisconsin and High Point, another very high-powered offensive game, and that's another popular 5-12 game where people really like to look at to pick a 12 over a 5. So Wisconsin, we've seen them play really well lately, especially their guard play. And guard play always is a huge factor in March. John Blackwell and Nick Boyd, they are an incredible duo. They shoot the lights out. They get to the rim. They draw fouls. And from what I can tell, High Point is a lot of the same. So expect to see a lot of threes, teams that take care of the ball. So very, very interesting matchup there as well.
I would love, hold chalk, to have an Arkansas-Wisconsin game. I think it'd be incredible. You talk about the guard play, Darius Acuff and those 2 guards from Wisconsin as well. I mean, it may be the best guard matchup we have in this whole tournament when you get those, if the potential for those 2 to play in that second round. And poor Arkansas, making a great run through the SEC tournament, playing late on Sunday. And what do you get rewarded with? The Thursday game out in Portland, Oregon. Wake up, let's play some basketball, So I said this about Arkansas on last night's podcast. I would love Arkansas if it wasn't for the head coach. I hope he doesn't get in their way because they have the talent, they have the strength, they have the guards, they got the size, they even have some veterans in Trevin Brazil, to where I think they can play with Arizona. I think both me and you looking at this West region, we talked about all the other games. Arizona's a really good basketball team, guys. You know, I talked about being bullish on those Big 12 teams. They're really, really good. They made that amazing conference look like they just did it. They just like, we're just going to run through everyone here and we're going to beat everyone and we're going to take on Kansas. We're going to take on, you know, Houston. We're going to take on the Iowa States. We're going to take on Devonta, and we're just going to beat them and beat them and beat them. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking of Arizona, I want to say that like they're the only team in the country that's beaten all of the top 5 or 6 current teams in KenPom. I mean, you talk about a wagon, like in its pure definition. They just don't really have a weakness. I guess maybe you could point to perimeter shooting as a, if you want to be nitpicky, but they just have size everywhere. They can get to their spots, and they're a very well coached basketball team with a lot of that high end talent. Because Koa Pete's likely going to be a lottery pick, right? Yeah. I believe I see him on a lot of draft boards. So Arizona, I think, I've just revealed right now because I don't think it's a secret. They're my pick to go all the way, and I think that's a lot of people's picks to go all the way as well. So I think if we can get that Arizona Arkansas matchup, or that Arizona or even Wisconsin, I think it makes for a lot of interesting matchups in games.
Yeah. And then let's finish this off back down here in the South region. A region that, you know, I talked about when we were talking about cover my eyes and don't make me watch them in their conference tournament. If you cover my eyes and made me not watch Florida in their conference tournament, I'd say let's run them all the way to the Final Four. They're playing incredible basketball. But like I said, I did see them play Vanderbilt and get punked. They got pantsed. And it was really one of the first times since the beginning of the year that Florida got pantsed like that. That they until that SEC tournament, they were really pushing through teams. Now, like it's been talked about ad nauseum this year, that SEC is not as top heavy as it was, especially last year. It's got some good depth, but, you know, looking at, you know, Buckyball at Texas A&M, I don't think it's the quality of opponents that Florida really had to go through last year with an Auburn, the number 1 overall seed, and Alabama, you know, someone that was making Final Four aspirations. You had a good Ole Miss team. You had Florida. You had a really good Texas team. All this stuff. All that. Tennessee was also very highly ranked last year. But a lot of people in the last month have said, hey, Florida, they might be running it back this year. And I now say caution, especially after seeing the South region. I think there are a lot of really good and competitive teams, including your own, Luke, your Illini down there as well.
Yeah, Florida, the very, very good chance to make it back to the national championship this year. Obviously, I think they struggled a little bit out of the gate compared to what people thought that they would be. I think no bias involved. I would love to see a rematch of them in Houston to get to the Final Four. I think that would be an incredible basketball game. Florida, I think what it's going to hinge on them is going to be their guard play. It took their Princeton, Xavier Lee, I believe is his name.
Yep.
It took him a little bit to get acclimated to the SEC. But if their guard play shows up like we have seen it, then absolutely they can make it back. Another game that I'm really interested in is the 4-13 game, Nebraska versus Troy, which you might think I'm crazy for saying, but Nebraska shoots the lights out from 3. They have shooters everywhere, and Rink Mast in the middle there is really, really solid. But Troy, they allow the least amount of 3-point. I think they have the highest, or how I want to phrase this. Basically, they allow 31% from 3, so which is the best in the country. So it's going to be a matter of offense versus defense. And Nebraska is really going to need their shooters to show up, and they're going to need Rink Mast to have a really good game.
Can you imagine Nebraska of one of their best seasons in modern history, you know, and they still can't get the monkey off their back. I mean, the storyline writes itself. For people that don't know, when I say monkey off the back, Nebraska famously has not won a game in the NCAA tournament. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, so you get a 4 seed, you have a great season in a very good and deep Big Ten. And what are you stuck with? You put to play a feisty Troy team that doesn't let you shoot the 3. Yeah, I think you're right on.
Yeah, and it's tough because I think you could have easily made a case for them to be a 3 seed as well and have a different matchup there. But I have confidence in Fred Hoiberg. He's one heck of a coach. And Sam Hoiberg, his son, very, very pesky guard, gets a lot of steals and just kind of makes the offense go. Price Sanford, he will torch you from 3 if you don't get on him quick. So that's going to be a really good game to watch as well. So lots of good matchups here. What are you seeing, Trey? Like what's the game that you're looking for in the first round?
It's gonna be ugly, but I'm very interested to watch the Clemson Iowa game because I think it's too. It take the under for all the betting people out there.
Absolutely.
But it's 2 very interesting teams that I think are just going to play the slowest brand of basketball in the world. So that's one thing that stands out to me. The other one is, I think the 7-10. 2 teams that play completely opposite ends of the basketball. Texas A&M play buckyball. They like to get it. They like to go get up the court. St. Mary's, the exact opposite. They're going to try to slow you down. I believe they're I think in the tournament, they're one of the slowest paced offensive teams and in the entire NCAA tournament. So those 2 games really stand out to me. But the biggest thing that I think, and I think you kind of teased it, if we get that rematch of the Houston, Florida, Todd Golding, the head coach of Florida, very famously, what's a nice way to say this? Outspoken. He's not quiet on what he says. Luke, have you seen where the second round of the South region is held?
Remind me.
It is in Houston, Texas. Can you imagine
that's
Florida versus Houston? We talk about chalk with a trip to the line to the NCAA tournament, a rematch of last year's national championship being held in Houston. Todd Golding, I'm surprised there's no quotes out right now of him just absolutely blowing a gasket on it anyway, but I can already see it. It's something that really intrigues me because I think those are 2 teams that Florida, Illinois, Houston, those 3 stand out to me above everyone else on this side. But the potential to get a Todd Golding Houston matchup in Houston to go to the Final Four, I'm just dreaming about it. So.
Oh, and you better believe that Kelvin Sampson's going to have his guys ready to play if that's what it comes down to. And Kelvin Sampson's he's not shy about putting his heart on his sleeve either.
Yeah.
Very tough-nosed guy. That's his MO, his mantra, just tough brand of basketball. I think their offense is going to have to really show up in this tournament for them to make it back to the national championship. Because I think at times the offense can be a little bit limited. But I mean, if you're out there playing harder than everybody else and you're getting to your spots and playing good defense, it's going to be hard to beat them. So
yeah. Well, Luke, let's hear it. We've kind of ran through each region here. And in these more news episodes, I try to keep it fairly short. I told Luke today, I said, we're probably going to run a little bit longer because we can go in the weeds, but we want to help you guys. We want to give you guys some hints of what we're seeing, of what we read about these teams. But sitting here on the South, Luke, who do you have in your Elite 8 matchup in the South making it to the Final Four?
Just what we talked about. I have Florida and Houston. It pains me, and I know all my friends and my classmates are probably going to clown me for not taking Illinois, but I mean, maybe not after this stretch that they've had, but I just think it's too enticing not to go there. Actually, I do have pretty much chalk going from the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. I've got Florida versus Nebraska and Illinois versus Houston. Florida and Houston is the one that I'm really looking forward to, but it's going to be tougher to get there for both of them.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I have a Florida Vanderbilt. I have Vanderbilt beating Nebraska. Florida getting the revenge on them. I have North Carolina, North Carolina, Illinois, Texas, A&M, Houston. I have Houston getting past Illinois, the Houston Florida rematch, and I think Houston gets them back. I think they get their lick back from last year, and I think Kelvin Sampson finds his way back to the Final Four.
Yeah. One quick note, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we get a Brad Underwood and Fran McCaffrey match in the first round.
You think they hug?
What's that?
I said, do you think they hug?
I think they should. I think they believe it or not, they're good friends. They've had a good relationship throughout the years. I know Fran has quite the reputation for. If any of you are familiar with the FranCon system, he goes from FranCon 1 all the way up to FranCon 9. He can really let the officials have it with his notorious stare down that he had a few years ago. I know, especially here in Illinois, Fran does not have a lot of fans. I personally find him to be hilarious. And I think he's just a passionate coach, and he's obviously a great coach now, taking his 5th different team to the NCAA tournament.
I believe the first coach to do that as well. I think I read.
Yes, I believe you're correct as well. So, and Penn won't be a pushover. They won't. They've got TJ Power, former 5-star, was at Duke, and now he's there. Obviously, went off in that championship game to get them here. So that'll be a really interesting matchup as well. So looking forward to it, and yeah, it's going to be a heck of a ride. So we'll see how it turns out.
Back up to the top here, the East, Luke. Who do you have in your Elite 8, and then going to the Final Four from there?
I've got Duke taking on St. John's and Michigan State taking on UCLA, with Duke playing Michigan State and Duke going to the Final Four.
Very similar on my end. I have Duke and Kansas. I have Kansas sneaking past St. John's in a very, very good competitive basketball game. On the bottom end, I have Michigan State, UConn, and I love Tom Izzo. I'm a Tom Izzo believer in the tournament, and I believe we get a Duke Michigan State Elite 8, which it feels like we have seen this before. And I think that Duke team pushes past and gets themselves back to the Final Four. Let's do the Midwest. What do you got coming out of the Midwest here, Luke?
I've got Michigan taking on Hofstra, which I know is going to sound crazy, but given the matchups we've got there, and then I've got Tennessee taking on Iowa State, with Michigan and Iowa State playing to go to the Final Four, and Iowa State besting Michigan.
So I have Michigan and Alabama. I didn't get Hofstra pulling through. I may have to make that change, though, after hearing the news about Aiden Holloway. So it depending on what happens there. But
I will say one note here. I will say Texas Tech. The only reason I'm down on them is just because of the loss of JT Toppin, and I think Akron matchup is going to be tough for them. But all that to say, Christian Anderson is a stud. They've got a very, very tough team. They have a really good head coach. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised here. I didn't want to go chalk all the way down. So if Texas Tech makes it to that matchup against Michigan, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah. And then on the bottom end, I have Tennessee and Iowa State. I have Iowa State getting by Tennessee. And then I do have Michigan getting past a very good Iowa State team. I think that is, out of all the Elite 8 matchups, that is the one that I am most looking forward to possibly happening. I think that would be just incredible basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finishing off here with the West, your Elite 8 going into the Final Four here.
I've got Arizona taking on Arkansas and Gonzaga taking on Purdue, with Arizona and Purdue advancing and Arizona making it to the Final Four and eventually the national championship.
Yep. This is the one that I got a little less chalky with. I have Arizona playing Arkansas, and I do have Arkansas winning that game. On the bottom half, I have BYU and Purdue. We kind of talked about AJ DeBonza, and I think he is someone that can drag them through that easier bottom half. I think Gonzaga is not as strong as a team as they were in the past. I have Purdue getting past BYU, and then I have Purdue beating Arkansas in the Elite 8 to go to the Final Four. I know you've kind of talked about your Final Four, but mine being Michigan, Purdue, and then Houston and Duke. I have Houston getting by Duke, Michigan getting by Purdue, and Michigan ending up being the national champion on my end.
Yeah. Again, would not be a total surprise at all. Just to recap, I've got Duke, Arizona, Florida, Iowa State, with Duke taking on Arizona and Arizona cutting down the nets. I know we've kind of gone chalk, but as we said at the top of the episode, this is probably the year to go chalk. So
yeah, last year we had the 4 number 1 seeds. Would not be shocked at all if that is that same sentiment this go around. But that's kind of everything that we've thrown. Luke, is there anything else that we kind of missed on that you wanted to add in there?
The one last thing I wanted to mention is I know everybody's going to be looking at those 5-12 matchups for good reason. There's a lot of historic value there, but don't overlook the 6 and 11 seeds, because in the last, I want to say 20-ish years, or even goes even farther than that, 11 seeds have won 62 out of 160 of the total matchups, while 12 seeds have won 57 out of the 160 total matchups. So if you need an upset somewhere in your bracket, look no further than an 11 seed winning at least one game.
And those 6-11 matchups this year are going to be the Louisville, South Florida that we spent some time talking about. We have the North Carolina VCU. And then we have the Tennessee versus the SMU versus Miami over Ohio. And then the BYU and NC State, Texas. So I love it. I love the old tidbits and stuff like that. So ladies and gentlemen, that is all we got tonight on More News. Make sure to follow us here down below on all of the more important issues. Social media platforms are all things Tennessee related. Luke, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Maybe we gave out the perfect bracket. So
that's what I'm looking forward to. So
yeah. Perfect. Well, guys, enjoy your March and make sure to subscribe and comment down below with anything me and Luke talked about. You guys have a good one.